When you truly understand the nature of imagination, you stop living in a state of waiting to be loved and instead begin to live as if you are already deeply loved. You no longer search outside yourself for validation because you realize that everything you see in the external world is simply a reflection, an echo of what is already active within your consciousness. The outer world is not creating your reality, it is responding to it. The moment you start embodying the feeling that the person you desire already loves you completely, something within your inner reality begins to reorganize itself. A new pattern is formed in your awareness. And since your outer experience is always shaped by your inner state, whatever you consistently feel and assume will eventually express itself in your life. It is not about pretending or forcing anything, it is about aligning with a state of being where love is already yours. Many people live from longing. They think love must come from outside, that they must earn it, chase it, or convince someone to give it to them. But the deeper truth is that your assumptions set the tone for what unfolds. When you hold the inner feeling of being loved, you naturally begin to see that love reflected back. Not because you are controlling anyone, but because consciousness expresses whatever state it is rooted in. Every person you experience is filtered through your own inner perception of them. If you constantly imagine distance, confusion, or disinterest, you will continue to see that reflected back. But if you shift into certainty, warmth, and inner knowing that you are loved and chosen, then your experience begins to align with that state. What you consistently accept as true internally becomes the blueprint of what unfolds externally. This is why acting as if is so powerful. It means you begin to live from the end result emotionally before it physically appears. You think differently, you carry yourself differently, and your inner dialogue transforms. Instead of doubt and waiting, there is calm certainty. Instead of chasing, there is quiet confidence. You no longer operate from lack but from fulfillment. Imagine what it feels like to be deeply adored by the person you desire, not in a weak or uncertain way, but in a strong, undeniable sense of love and attraction. Imagine them thinking about you naturally, wanting to be close to you, valuing your presence, and choosing you without hesitation. Allow that feeling to become familiar inside your mind until it feels natural rather than forced. When you maintain the assumption that you are already loved, your entire internal state shifts. Your anxiety begins to fade. Your energy becomes softer and more grounded. You stop chasing because in your awareness you are already chosen. This inner transformation is what influences how everything else unfolds. It is not about words or strategies, but about identity and state of being. You are not meant to struggle or endlessly try to change the external world. The real shift happens within. Once your inner assumption stabilizes, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it back in some form. This is because your consciousness is the origin point of your experience. You are always expressing your dominant state, whether you realize it or not. When you begin to see yourself as the one who is loved, desired, and valued, you step into a completely different version of yourself. You are no longer the one waiting, wondering, or hoping. You become the one who knows. And that shift alone changes how you carry yourself in every situation. Instead of analyzing every action or message, you rest in inner certainty. Instead of questioning what they feel, you assume the feeling you desire is already real. You begin to respond internally as if love is already being expressed toward you. This is not about deception. It is about choosing a state of awareness that aligns with the experience you want to live. Many people hesitate here because it feels unrealistic at first, but everything that exists in the physical world first existed in imagination. Every invention, every relationship, every outcome began as an internal experience before becoming visible. Imagination is not escape, it is the creative foundation of experience. You do not need permission from circumstances or people to feel loved. You only need to occupy the state of being loved. When that becomes your natural internal environment, everything around you begins to reorganize itself accordingly. You start to notice changes in behavior, energy, and communication because your perception has shifted. Now imagine the version of you who is already secure in this love. That version is not anxious, not desperate, and not constantly checking for reassurance. That version of you is calm, steady, and confident. They move through life with ease because they are no longer trying to receive love. They are living from the awareness that it is already present. Everything begins with your inner world. If you want to experience love, you must first become the version of yourself who is already experiencing it. Not later, not in the future, but now. Because the present moment is where creation happens. The outer world is always delayed, always catching up to what you consistently assume within. Many people try to fix external behavior while ignoring internal state, but this never brings lasting change. True transformation happens when you shift the feeling inside first. When your assumption is secure, your external experience has no choice but to follow that pattern. When you act as if they already love you, you step into a new identity. You stop being someone who waits and become someone who is naturally chosen. This subtle shift changes how you interpret everything. People begin to respond differently, not because you are forcing anything, but because your internal state has changed the lens through which you see them. Every moment you imagine love, feel affection, or internally accept the idea that you are cherished, you are reinforcing a new direction in your experience. And over time, what you repeatedly dwell in becomes your natural reality. There is no need for external validation. The only thing that matters is what you consistently accept as true in your inner world. If you can hold the feeling of being loved, even quietly and privately within your own mind, that state begins to solidify and express itself outwardly. When doubt appears, you do not fight it. You simply return to the feeling of certainty. You return to the awareness that love is already yours. You return to the version of yourself who is secure and chosen. That consistency is what shapes your reality over time. Eventually, you begin to live with a quiet confidence. You no longer feel like love is something uncertain or far away. Instead, it feels stable, present, and natural. You move through life with a sense of calm knowing, and that inner stability becomes the foundation for everything you experience. And when the moment finally comes that your outer reality reflects this inner state, it will not feel like a surprise. It will feel like confirmation of something you already knew within yourself. Because you will realize that it was never about chasing love, but about becoming the version of you who already embodied it. When you start living from the feeling of being truly loved, something subtle but powerful begins to shift in your entire presence. You naturally carry a sense of confidence as if you've already been chosen. The old habits of constantly checking your phone or waiting for reassurance begin to fade because in your inner world connection already exists. You feel it. You experience it internally before anything appears externally. You stop replaying painful memories or old conversations that once caused doubt or confusion. Instead, your mind begins to form new inner experiences filled with affection, warmth, and emotional closeness. Even your perception of the other person changes. You no longer see them through the lens of uncertainty or distance. You begin to hold a version of them that is more loving, more present, more emotionally available in your awareness. As you maintain this new inner state, the previous version you once carried starts to lose its emotional hold. It fades naturally, like darkness disappearing when light is introduced. This is the power of inner transformation. When your assumption changes, your emotional experience changes with it, and you are no longer easily shaken by external behavior. What they do or don't do stops controlling your mood because your inner knowing becomes stable. You begin to realize that your internal state is the real source of your experience. Not their actions, not their words, but your own consciousness. When you stay rooted in the feeling of being loved, you become emotionally steady. Small shifts may begin to appear in the outer world. They may reach out more, communicate more openly, or show unexpected warmth. But instead of clinging to these signs, you simply allow them to pass naturally because your real focus is already anchored inside you. The real change is not in their behavior first, but in your identity. You start becoming someone who feels naturally loved and valued. And as this identity strengthens, your imagination becomes a safe space where love feels real and alive. You can close your eyes and feel their presence, hear their voice in a warm and familiar way, and sense emotional closeness without effort or resistance. You do not experience these inner moments as longing anymore. Instead, they feel like quiet ownership, as if what you desire is already part of your reality. This gentle repetition of feeling and imagining slowly reshapes your subconscious mind. Over time, this inner world becomes your dominant reality, and your outer experience begins to align with it. People often underestimate the power of consistency. They want instant change, but real transformation happens through steady emotional alignment. Each moment you choose to feel loved, you strengthen a new identity within yourself. Slowly, the old identity built on fear, doubt, and uncertainty begins to dissolve. You are not just imagining affection anymore. You are becoming the version of yourself who naturally experiences it. And when that shift happens internally, your outer reality begins to mirror it in subtle and sometimes surprising ways. The person you think about may start to feel more drawn to you, more curious, more emotionally open, even if they cannot explain why. At the same time, you no longer worry about distance, timing, or competition. Those concerns lose meaning because in your inner world, connection already exists. You begin to feel emotionally secure, as if the bond you desire is already established. This internal certainty creates a strong magnetic effect in your energy, but not from neediness or chasing. Instead, it comes from calm confidence and inner fulfillment. Your inner dialogue also begins to change. Instead of repeating old disappointments or fears, you naturally create new scenarios in your mind where love is expressed clearly and kindly. You imagine conversations filled with understanding, affection, and emotional closeness. Over time, your subconscious accepts these patterns as familiar, and what feels familiar becomes what you experience. As your inner world fills with this sense of love, your self perception transforms as well. You begin to see yourself as someone worthy of care, attention, and emotional devotion. You treat yourself more gently. You carry yourself with more confidence. You make decisions from a place of security rather than fear or lack. This is the true turning point. When your self concept shifts, everything else begins to follow. Love no longer feels like something you must chase or struggle for. It begins to feel like something natural, something that flows towards you effortlessly. You stop questioning whether you are valued or cared for because you already feel it within. And that feeling becomes your anchor. Even when external circumstances change or fluctuate, your inner state remains steady. That stability is what reshapes your entire experience. As this continues, life begins to feel softer. Situations that once triggered anxiety no longer affect you the same way. You respond differently because you feel different inside. And because your inner world has changed, your outer world slowly reflects that new emotional pattern with accuracy. You begin to live from certainty rather than fear, from trust rather than doubt, from emotional fullness rather than emptiness. And without forcing anything, everything starts to align more naturally around you. The more you relax into this feeling of already being loved, the more your old identity fades away. The version of you that once worried, chased, or questioned begins to dissolve. In its place grows someone calm, grounded, and emotionally secure. You start to notice love not as something rare or distant, but as something that is simply part of who you are. And from that space, you stop trying to earn it and start allowing it. Eventually, this becomes your natural state of being. You carry love within you, and that inner experience becomes the foundation of everything you attract. As your inner image of reality changes, something subtle but powerful begins to unfold. The consciousness you carry within you starts flowing through everything you experience, shaping your reality effortlessly. With time, the connection you feel in your imagination grows stronger, warmer, and more alive. It begins to feel as though there is an invisible thread between you and the person you desire, a connection that deepens with every passing moment. You start to sense their presence in a different way, not through physical evidence, but through feeling. It feels as if they are thinking of you, as if their attention is naturally drawn toward you even before anything is expressed outwardly. You are no longer waiting for something to happen. Instead, you feel as though you are already inside the unfolding of a new reality, experiencing it from within. As you remain in this inner state, what once felt distant begins to feel inevitable. You move through your day with a quiet sense of companionship, as if their presence is gently walking beside you, even in silence. This is not imagination in a childish sense, but imagination as a creative force. It is the awareness that your inner world is constantly shaping your outer experience through every feeling you hold. Because of this inner connection, loneliness begins to fade. You no longer feel forgotten or emotionally empty. Instead, there is a steady feeling that everything is already unfolding in the right way, at the right time, leading you toward what you already accept within yourself. Every time you return to the feeling of being loved, that inner bond strengthens even more. This repetition is not forced or heavy. It feels natural, even comforting. There is something peaceful about closing your eyes and experiencing the warmth of imagined affection, hearing the voice you long to hear, and feeling emotionally held in your inner world. Each of these inner experiences becomes a seed planted deep within your subconscious mind, gradually shaping your outer reality. As this feeling grows stronger, the old version of you begins to fade away. The version that questioned your worth, doubted love, or felt uncertain about being enough slowly dissolves. That identity was built on old beliefs and past emotional patterns. Now, you are rewriting that story from within, forming a new sense of self that naturally expects love rather than fears its absence. Your reactions begin to shift in powerful but subtle ways. When doubt appears, you no longer spiral into anxiety. Instead, you gently return to your inner certainty. The feeling that they love you remains steady within you. Even when external triggers appear, you stay grounded because you understand that the outer world is temporary, while the inner world is the true source of experience. You begin trusting your inner reality more than what you see outside. This trust becomes your anchor, and as you remain in this state, you begin noticing small synchronicities, moments that feel meaningful, like hearing conversations about love, seeing reminders that reflect your thoughts, or experiencing coincidences that mirror your inner world. These are not things to depend on, but gentle reflections of your internal alignment. Even your thoughts about the person change. They no longer feel anxious or uncertain. Instead, they become calm, warm, and naturally affectionate. It feels as though there is a deeper connection forming beyond words, something subtle but powerful that cannot be explained logically but is felt deeply within. Your intuition also becomes sharper. You begin sensing emotional shifts without needing physical confirmation. You feel closeness developing, a softening in energy, a quiet emotional movement that aligns with your inner assumption. This inner knowing replaces the need for external proof. You no longer hope, they feel real within you. You become magnetic not through effort but through alignment. You are no longer chasing love, you are embodying it. And this embodiment changes everything about your presence. You are no longer someone waiting to be chosen, you feel already chosen. As this state deepens, you begin to enjoy it. You enjoy the inner experiences, the quiet imagination, the emotional warmth, and the certainty that everything is unfolding perfectly. Life begins to feel lighter. Even small things start to feel more meaningful, more connected, more alive. You walk into spaces with a calm, steady energy. People respond naturally to that shift. Conversations flow more easily. Life feels smoother, less resistant. This is the natural outcome of living from an inner state of love and certainty. When your inner image of love changes, everything inside you begins to shift. The energy you carry becomes calmer, more stable, and more aligned with the feeling of already being loved. From this state, life starts to feel like it is organizing itself around the emotional truth you hold within. You are no longer questioning whether love will come or whether you are chosen. Instead, you naturally begin to assume that love is already part of your reality, something steady, natural, and inevitable. This assumption is not something loud or forced. It is quiet, like a deep background feeling running through your mind all the time. When old fears try to return, you don't fight them. You simply return to the feeling of being loved, as if resting into something soft and familiar. The more you do this, the more it becomes your emotional home, your default state of being. From here, your reactions to life begin to change. You don't get shaken as easily. You don't fall into anxiety when something unexpected happens because your inner world feels secure. You understand that nothing outside can truly disturb the love you have already accepted within yourself. That inner certainty becomes your strength, not because you are controlling outcomes, but because you feel grounded in the outcome being already aligned. As you move through your day, your imagination becomes a place of peace instead of longing. When you think of them, you don't feel lack, you feel connection. When you picture them, it feels natural, like something already unfolding rather than something you are waiting for. This consistent inner experience is what your subconscious begins to accept as truth. And once it accepts it, it starts expressing it outwardly. Your daydreams shift from uncertainty into fulfillment. You no longer imagine distance or confusion, but closeness, warmth, and emotional harmony. This inner fullness naturally reflects outward, shaping how you feel, how you carry yourself, and how you respond to life. You stop seeing them as distant or unpredictable. Instead, they feel emotionally closer, more aligned, more connected to your inner state. Your assumptions about them begin to feel natural, and because they feel natural, they begin to shape your experience without effort. As this continues, your identity transforms. You start living as someone who is already loved, already valued, already chosen. This shift influences everything: your tone, your posture, your decisions, and the way you relate to yourself. You are no longer acting from fear or lack, but from emotional fullness. Even your thoughts begin to soften. Old stories that once triggered insecurity no longer feel relevant. They lose emotional weight because they don't match who you are becoming. Instead, your inner world becomes a safe space where you consistently return to feelings of warmth, love, and connection. In silence, you may even feel this bond so strongly that it feels almost real. There is warmth in your chest, calmness in your thoughts, and a deep sense of emotional certainty. And because this inner experience feels real, your outer world begins to reflect it in its own way. You start moving through life with a quiet confidence. You don't feel the need to chase, explain, or seek validation. There is a natural sense of being already enough. People around you begin to respond differently, not because you are trying, but because your energy has changed. You carry yourself like someone who is already loved, and that presence is felt. This is where real transformation happens, not in forcing anything outside, but in shifting what you accept inside. When your inner state becomes steady, your outer experience begins to reorganize itself around it. The connection you feel strengthens not through effort, but through consistency of belief and feeling. Eventually, you stop waiting altogether. You stop doubting. You stop shrinking yourself. Instead, you begin to live from a quiet certainty that what you desire is already unfolding. You feel it, you embody it, and you allow it to become your natural state. And from that state, everything begins to align softly, steadily, and inevitably around the love you first chose within yourself. Everything comes back to the inner world you choose to live in. When you begin to feel loved from within, you stop chasing and start embodying the very experience you desire. That inner certainty reshapes your energy, your presence, and the way life responds to you. What once felt distant begins to feel natural because your assumption becomes your reality. And in that quiet shift, you realize the love you were searching for was always something you had the power to create within yourself.